Number 10, Soylent Green. So this is one of the older films on the list. It's based on a book called Make Room, Make Room. And the reason I love this film so much is because it's about overpopulation. And I believe that, honestly, overpopulation is probably going to be the downfall of our society. Star Trek has set up this world, this perfect world, and they have these inventions that make this perfect world possible. And one of the inventions, of course, is space travel. Star Trek has this invention where they can pile 1 million people on spaceships and take them somewhere else where they can live. Right? So they don't have to deal with overpopulation and running out of resources. And I think that is what's going to happen to us. Now, of course, there could be a massive plague that wipes out 3/4 of the population, and the people that are left start over, you know. Or there could be a war and we just literally destroy ourselves, you know. But overpopulation is a big thing, and I love that Soylent Green deals with this topic. Of course, it's got an amazing twist at the end, but it's little stuff. It's like, I think there's a point where he's kind of chasing a bad guy, and he comes into this stairwell, and literally there's 100 people sleeping on the stairwell. Most of the shots in the film are them stepping over people to try to get to someone that they want to talk to. There's people in the streets. It's the claustrophobia of it and the lack of resources. There's a brilliant scene where this guy's very privileged. He's a cop. So when he investigates a murder, if it's a rich person, he just takes all their stuff because nobody will stop him because he's a cop. So he takes all their stuff, and there's a brilliant scene where he brings home, each cop has a researcher that's assigned with them, someone who can look in books, because cops can't read, but researchers can. It's all in the future. So the researcher will help them solve cases by studying things. But the cop brings home meat to the researcher, and the researcher starts crying because they haven't had it. It's great. It's really good. It is of its time, right? Beware. I think it's a late 60s film. The cop is so privileged that they also have sex with whomever they want. So there's sex and stuff in it, you know what I mean? But it's interesting because when you see it like that, it could be a critique, right? This could be a slightly feministic film, just because it's showing the way women are treated, you know. But it's very interesting. It's definitely worth a watch. It's a good film. Soylent Green. Or Make Room, Make Room. All right, where are we? Number 9, Planet of the Apes. So I love this. I love Planet of the Apes. It's got a great twist at the end. Rod Serling helped write it, the guy who worked on The Twilight Zone. And this is a very rare example of a kind of a Twilight Zone approach that isn't too long, you know. The film is film length, which I think at that time was probably about 1:45 or whatever. And every bit of it's cool. It is a good film and definitely worth checking out. I really enjoyed it. Of course, there's been a ton of sequels. And I'm talking about the old one. I'm talking about back in the early 70s, I think, for this one. But there's new films. I think the last trilogy did pretty well, actually. And I think they're probably pretty good. But nothing's like that first one. You have to go check out the original Planet of the Apes. It's really great. Okay, number 8, Godzilla. So the first Godzilla film, and of course there's a whole franchise, and I'm talking the old one again, right? I'm talking probably 50s Japan, maybe 60s, I'm not sure, but early, early. That first Godzilla film is great. And of course, the poignancy of the end of World War II and the dropping of the atomic bombs and the destruction of those cities, and then seeing this creature, and it's great. The brilliance of it is the Japanese blame themselves for Godzilla. And that says a lot about World War II and about the dropping of the bombs and about the Japanese culture in general, right? It's really well done when you consider the dropping of those bombs. It's just brilliant. And I haven't got to see the new one yet. I really want to, because I've heard that they're kind of going back to this old school idea about Godzilla. Because Godzilla just wreaks havoc. I mean, just destroys everything, because that's all it knows how to do with that radiation poisoning. And I mean, it's a monster, you know. It's kind of like Frankenstein, except a million times larger, you know. Just a great film, definitely worth checking out. And I'm going to try to see the new one. I think you should as well. It's that Godzilla -1, I think, is what it's called. Really great. Okay, that was number 8, Godzilla. Number 7, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek. So I had to put Star Trek on here, of course. They do have sci-fi films, so they count. I like basically all the Star Trek films. I think some are much weaker than others. 5 is probably the worst Star Trek film. But I really love the overall statement that 5 makes. The idea that believing in a God that's going to come and save everything is a tiny bit dangerous, because if an advanced culture gets word of this, they can take advantage of it, of course, you know. And that's kind of what the film is about this entity kind of taking advantage of people's faith to receive things, which a lot of religions do as well, to be perfectly honest. Not all, but a lot. But Wrath of Khan is excellent. A group of people working together to try to solve a problem. It's a little bit dark, you know, because they are fighting humans. They are genetically modified humans, but they are fighting humans. But they've got this neat device that will turn a rocky, barren world into a life-sustaining planet in like an hour or something, you know, which is pretty amazing. It's this bomb. And of course, the problem with it is if you drop it on a planet that does have life, it'll wipe out all the life that exists and create new life. So it is a weapon, the Genesis device. And it's cool. It raises some interesting questions. It's got some neat sci-fi. It's got a positive outlook on humanity. I really enjoy it. It's a good film, a very good film. You should see it. Number 6, I'm gonna say Alien by Ridley Scott. Okay, so Alien is terrifying. It is so dark and so disturbing and just shocking. I mean, it's a scary, scary film. I first saw the film in '79 in the theater, I believe, if my memory serves me, and it's been a long time. So memory doesn't always work out, but what I remember is having a bag of M&Ms and something happening, and I threw M&Ms everywhere. It was so terrifying. The film is brilliant. It's so dark and scary, and definitely worth checking out. The sequels get a little bit weird. there's a weird idea in Hollywood about what makes a genius. And then when a genius is found, like the people who made Delicatessen, right? It's a good movie, and they're good filmmakers. Um, and I think they gave them. It's the person, one of the people, and I think the person made Amelie, one of those people. Um, Another film, City of Lost Children, I think they made, and then the guy got Alien 4. And Alien 4 is a blast. It is such a weird, crazy, bizarre film, but it doesn't feel like Alien, right? And the same thing is true with Alien 2. To be honest with you, to Aliens. If James Cameron here, if James Cameron were here, he would have punched me for saying Alien 2. Aliens. They grabbed James Cameron, who's an action director, and they had him make an action film. And it's a brilliant action film, right? It's really good. But it's not Alien, right? It's so different. It's so James Cameron instead of, and I don't want to say instead of Ridley Scott, because I don't feel like Ridley Scott like made Alien unmakeable by anybody else because it is officially Ridley Scott stamped. Do you know what I'm saying? You can go see, you could watch Gladiator and then Alien and not know it's the same director, right? But if you watch something like City of Lost Children and Alien 4, you're going to realize with all those same actors being brought in and that quirky style, you're going to realize it's the same director, right? And I think kind of the same thing with James Cameron. I think for people who love the horror of Aliens was a slight disappointment. It lost its mystery. It just became this crazy action extravaganza, which is a really good action extravaganza, don't get me wrong, but it's not Alien. You know what I mean? And I think Hollywood kind of does that. I think the Marvel films do that sometimes too, where they'll find someone who's supposedly this new genius and they'll try to slot him in, you know, and either the relationship falls apart or you get this really quirky movie. And sometimes it works out. I think Thor is an example of that. The third Thor film, right, does not look like a Thor movie, but it's kind of becoming the Thor movie. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Alien, the franchise, I believe, has kind of suffered. They brought David Fincher in to do Alien 3, and that's a relationship that just fell apart, right? Because David Fincher doesn't want to be told what to do. He wants to make a good movie. And if they would have left him alone, I think Alien 3 would have turned out a lot better than it did. And of course, the advertising was a disaster as well. To say, in space, no one can hear you scream, but on Earth, everyone can hear you scream. So everyone knows, oh, the aliens are coming to Earth, which doesn't happen in the film. So you're just like, what the hell is going on? It's one alien? Didn't we have 1,000 aliens in the last movie? And aren't we supposed to be on Earth? And I mean, they just shot themselves in the foot over and over again, even though the movies are good. I do want to say that. Alien 4 is just fine. Alien 3 is good. It's an enjoyable movie once you realize that David Fincher did his best and then the studio came in and screwed it all up, you know? But it's still worth checking out, absolutely. I'm not a huge Ridley Scott fan. I don't go any later than that, really. I didn't enjoy the weird... Like, okay, so in Alien, there's a scene where they find the skeleton of this old alien looking through this giant telescope is kind of what it looks like. And there's a huge hole in his chest. And the humans are like a foot tall. They're tiny compared to the size of this huge alien. I mean, it's freaky and mysterious. Why is there a hole in his chest? You know, I mean, it's just crazy. And I guess the weird white guys that are like 8 feet tall are supposed to be one of those. which is just a horrible choice to take away that mystery. And I don't know. I don't know. But Alien is a really good example of when they show the monster and it's still good. That Alien is so terrifying because of H.R. Geiger, I believe, because of the artists they got. It's terrifying. So well done. And I know that seeing that artwork is really what inspired them to create the alien that way, you know. Just brilliant, really terrifying, really well done. And the robot, oh my God, the robot's so scary and weird in that film as well. Just great, great stuff. So I need to talk about Blade Runner for a second. Okay, so Blade Runner could have gone in this slot, right? It was Blade Runner or Alien. I chose Alien. I love Blade Runner. I think I love Blade Runner more than Alien. But there's one big problem that I have with Blade Runner and with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And that is the sex. And I know it's kind of a weird thing to bring up, but it's such an important piece of both the films and of the book. Like Rachel throws his android sheep off the roof of his building because he has sex with her and then ignores her, right? It's weird. A major plot point in these films are people having sex with robots. Or in the second film, you've got a robot having sex with an AI that has been layered over a human. Like, what the hell is going on? You know, and I totally understand that probably within the next 25 or 30 years, that's going to become a human topic, you know. There's going to be sex robots. And there's going to be people who would prefer to have sex with a robot over a human. And how do the humans feel about that? And what kind of laws are going to get passed? And it's the same thing with the holodeck in Star Trek, right? I mean, what does society need to do to not just say, I don't like humans. I don't want to be around humans. I've got my dolls here, so I'm going to hang out with my dolls, and all these humans can just go away, you know? People working from home, and I know it's a topic, but it's not a topic that I care to delve into. It's an important topic. And I especially don't want it in Blade Runner because to me, Blade Runner is about empathy for animals and it's about slavery, right? These are important issues that also need to be talked about. And the sex seems to take over everything. Roy Batty is probably one of the coolest characters, right? Knowing when he's going to die and raging and escaping from slavery and just tearing across the galaxy, destroying everything in order to try to get him more life and Pris more life as well, of course, right? But that's so important and so should really, really be the focus of these movies, right? This weird robot cop that everybody hates in the second film, you know? It's basically slavery. I don't believe he needs to eat, right? He needs a place to live, and the police probably provide him with that place to live, but it's not like he's being paid. It's not like he's saluted in any way. Everybody hates him. Everybody hates him. And that opening scene where he goes to the guy from Guardians of the Galaxy plays an android in the beginning of 2049, and this cop has to show up and kill him because he's an android, basically. He has to die. He's not allowed to be on Earth. And there's this mystery, right? Like there were two androids and a human living here, and there's an android buried out in the yard because they died, and then this android gets killed, and the human is fled, and I mean the slavery and the horrible treatment giving. It's so weird because in the first film they say we give them emotions because it makes them easier to control, which is completely insane, right? If you need somebody to go move a ton of rocks from here to here, you don't give them emotions. You just program it to go get the rocks and bring them over here. That's it, right? There is no need to control them. We control machines by telling them what to do. That's it. You know, and then the corporation has that stupid motto, more human than human, right? Because that's their goal, right? They want to become God. They want to make humans, but humans that they can control, right? It's such a neat and important topic, and the sex just bowls over everything, which is way too bad. In the first film, there's that terrible sex scene with Rachel and Harrison Ford, Decker. But that's why I put Alien on the list, and Blade Runner is kind of got this side seat because I feel like they're trying to talk about too much in one film, which is too bad. And I know they're unavoidable topics. They're going to come up in society eventually. But I would prefer to talk about the one that's a problem right now, not the one that's probably going to be a problem in the future. Okay, good. So number 5. Oh, no, I do want to say just real quick, there's a song in the original Blade Runner film by David Byrne and Brian Eno, which came out on an album. They had an album back in the early 80s. I don't remember what it's called, but it's Middle Eastern chanting, religious chanting with music underneath it. And they use it in the Blade Runner film. And once it came out and it started getting popular and it got put in Blade Runner, that religion started protesting. So David Byrne said, sorry, we won't release it again. And they did re-release the album without that track. If you buy the new version, you don't get the track. But if you buy the original version, you do get that track. And it's really good. They did such a good job of using that chanting and putting the music underneath it. And it's brilliantly used in Blade Runner as well. It's worth looking into, but I do want to say the people that got ripped off, right, the chanting that they took to create that song are not happy with it. So beware of that. But it sounds really good. Okay. Number 5. We're down to the top 5. Holy cow. So my number 5 is THX 1138. And this is kind of a weird one, I know, but I love this movie. There's this great scene where they have confession booths, right? But they're all pre-recorded. There's not a priest in the booth, right? And the guy is just freaking out. He's having trouble with his meds, and it's in the future, and he's having a lot of trouble. And he goes into this confession booth, and he confesses that he thinks he's dying, and then he throws up all over in the booth. And the booth responds, "We should be thankful for commerce. You should buy more. You should buy now. It will make you happy." Which is so messed up and cool. Such a critique on society and on religion and drugs. You know what I mean? Really, really well done. Really brilliant. Of course, this person went on to make Star Wars, right? George Lucas. He made Star Wars, which is about it. He did make a really fun cruising film, which I'm not going to remember the name of right now. It just came out on 4K. You can pick it up. It's a really good movie. Harrison Ford's in it. Opie's in it. I hate to say Opie. I can never remember the actor's name or the director's name, to be honest, because he's gone on to make several hugely famous films. But he's in it. It's a really good movie. But then he made Star Wars, and Star Wars was just the end of everything for him. And I do like Star Wars, and I like The Empire Strikes Back. They're a little bit vapid, right? There's not a lot of heart, and there's not a lot of science. It's just adventure, right? There's a lot of adventure. It's an adventure movie. I like Star Wars, the adventure movie. I like The Empire Strikes Back. I cannot stand Return of the Jedi. I hate that movie. It's so vapid and bad. It's just not a good film. And that just kind of continued, I think, for him. Honestly, the only Star Wars product that we've bought is Mandalorian. I really love the first episode of The Mandalorian. It's great. I think it's Jon Favreau or something like that is the guy. He's in the Iron Man films. But it's really good. I like that. But that's kind of the only Star Wars that I can really get into aside from Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. But THX is just great. And a really neat thing, if you buy the DVD version or the Blu-ray version of THX, they include his student film on that as well. And it's really short, right? Of course, it's a student film. It's probably 8 minutes or something. But it uses sounds so interestingly. And I think that that's what really got George Lucas noticed. And you can hear it for a moment in Star Wars when they're powering up the beam to destroy the planet, Leia's planet. There's these weird transmissions. You can hear this sort of, right? All these weird sounds are going while they're powering up this beam. And that's taken directly from his student film. And in the student film, it's so creepy and weird and cool. And I think he kind of lost that as time went by, unfortunately. But I think it was really inspired and cool. And I really love THX. And it's kind of like Logan's Run, right? It's a futuristic society where everybody's happy. And then eventually, or Fahrenheit 451, or, any of those sort of futuristic worlds where somebody decides, I need to go. And they run, right? And he escapes, he gets out. And you don't see the world. That's the one big difference, I think, between this and like Fahrenheit 451 and Logan's Run. You see the society that they go to in those films. In this film, you don't see it. He literally just pops open the hatch and stands up, and the sun is setting behind him. And it's this really distant shot. It's really a great shot. And of course, they didn't use the lead actor for it because you can't tell who's standing there. But the sun is going down. They get this brilliant shot to end the film. And that's the end. You don't see what happens to him or where he goes. You just know, that society is bad enough that you just know that he's going to a better place wherever it is. Anywhere is better than that, Good. All right. George Lucas. Poor George Lucas. He's wealthy beyond belief. And Star Wars is popular. Don't get me wrong. He's doing just fine. But I think it's weird for him to be kind of stuck in that loop of just making Star Wars over and over again. Okay. So number 4, Stalker. Okay. So a Russian director. He's made 2 sci-fi films that I'm aware of. He made Stalker and he made Solaris. I love them both. I chose Stalker. Stalker, of course, is based on Roadside Picnic. If you ever read that, that's what Stalker's based on. And Solaris, of course, is based on Solaris. I chose Stalker because Solaris has a passive protagonist, right? Solaris is a person who goes to this weird space place and is totally affected by everything around him the whole time. All you watch is this poor actor emoting about everything that they're seeing and doing. The sci-fi is cool. It's this weird planet that makes all your dreams come true. And do you want to leave there, or do you want to be there? And will you get trapped there? And it's cool and scary and weird. And it's long, you know. And that's another thing, the Russian culture, right? These films are not American films. They have a whole different approach to life and to society and to culture. What's important to them and what's important to us is completely different. And my wife, when she was in Russia, she went and saw a play. And this play literally was a person rowing a boat from stage left to stage right. That's it. That's all they do is row this boat. And it wasn't a really long play, but it was kind of long, right? And there are things that happen, right? There's waves that are going by, which make it a little bit harder to row. And sometimes they'll go backwards because they get tired, but then they start going forward again. And this Russian crowd was ecstatic, emotionally charged, watching this person go from here, this average person, right? This normal working human, go from here to here and doing it. And they were cheering, right? Applauding on their feet, loving it, right? And my wife is like, wow, this is quite an experience. This is strange. Because that's not American, right? But it's very Russian. And these films are very Russian. There are travel sequences, and I don't mean to associate the travel just because the boat traveled, but there are travel sequences in this film that are long. Nothing happens, right? Nothing's being said, and nobody's struggling in this case. Nobody's struggling. They're just traveling. They literally get this little cart started, and they all sit down on the cart, and the cart starts going. And this is a 15-minute sequence. Not one word is said while they travel from their reality to this new reality. The cart's this weird liminal space, and they live in it for 15 minutes silently, just watching the terrain go by. And it's beautiful and weird and boring and strange and cool. It's very cool. And the plot of Stalker is so weird because stalkers are people who take people through an area where something has happened. In this case, aliens have landed. This area is alien. It doesn't look alien, but it is alien, you know? And there's no special effects at all. They haven't. The only way the area is alien is it's unpopulated, right? It kind of looks like Chernobyl. Everything's kind of destroyed and run down, and they're moving through it, and they're talking about, be careful, there's a trap there. Don't go that way. Let's go this way. And they don't show the trap, and nobody gets caught in the trap, but they avoid the trap because they have a stalker. And this stalker is taking them to a room, and when they enter the room, all of their dreams come true. And the stalker doesn't realize it, but the other two people he's taking with him have ulterior motives, right? One of them has a bomb, and they're going to destroy the room. And the other hasn't decided whether they even dare to go in the room yet or not, because when you go in the room, you don't say your wish. The room delves into your mind, to your deepest desire, and it makes that come true. Which is kind of terrifying, right? like humans have this weird barrier between what they think and what they do. And humans are judged by what they do, not by what they think. And of course, if they keep their thoughts to themselves, right? If you write a book about all the things that you think, then technically you've kind of acted on them. You wrote a book about them, you're making money off of them, and you could be judged by that. You know what I mean? But truly, if you keep what you think deep down inside, then you're not judged by that. You're judged by the way you act because nobody knows what you're thinking. But if you go in this room, right, what if he suddenly becomes the emperor of the world? You know, then all these people are his subjects all of a sudden, and they are going to judge him for making them, for putting them in that position, you know. So one is afraid to go in the room, the other one wants to blow up the room. And when they arrive at the room, all of that becomes clear, and none of them dare to take action. They're all just stuck there trying to decide, should they go forward, should they go back, and eventually they just leave. They can't do it. They cannot do it. And I think it's such a brilliant kind of observation about humans. And this is slightly contradictory for me because you could just say, well, isn't that just Lord of the Flies, you know? But the fact that they can't do it says so much to me about humans and about Russian culture, of course, and all humans, really. The idea that they can't do it and they just come back. They just leave the area. And in the end, the guy, I don't know how the book ends. I have not read Roadside Picnic. But in the end, the stalker just gathers up his whole family and takes them in to live in this area. Because life is just so mundane outside of he can't live outside the area. He just takes his family and they all go in. It's brilliant. It's beautiful and dark and sad and weird, and it's cool. It's very artistic, and it's definitely worth taking the time to check out. It's really good. Really, really good. So I recommend both. I recommend Stalker and Solaris, of course. And if you can read the books, I recommend that too. Okay, so that was number 4. So number 3, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So, of course, because of my age, right? I mean, Spielberg is my film life. You know what I mean? Going to see the new Spielberg movie was huge on everyone's list. And all that died away, right? It basically left, maybe after E.T. I mean, it didn't last long, you know? By the time Schindler's List came out, it was pretty clear that the Spielberg that we knew kind of didn't exist anymore, you know? And Schindler's List is a great movie. There's nothing wrong with that movie. It's just not early Spielberg, you know? But Spielberg had to be on the list, and I've got him way high. Close Encounters is brilliant, right? It's about first contact, basically. How it affects people and how it can ruin their lives. And then hopefully, eventually, it can pay off in some kind of a resolution for them. Of course, he made E.T. He produced Back to the Future. This is what made Spielberg so impactful at that time. It's not just Jaws, Close Encounters, and E.T., right? He also had a hand in Back to the Future and Poltergeist and Gremlins. There are many, Duel exists, right? There are many Spielberg films from that time because he was working so hard and touching on so many things. Indiana Jones, right? I mean, Spielberg just dominated the film industry partly because of his relationship with um, George Lucas, right? George Lucas and he did Indiana Jones together, right? But he's everywhere. He's everywhere at that time. So he's so important for all of that. Also, Jurassic Park, of course. Jurassic Park was big. And Jurassic Park is neat because it kind of leads to this weird chain. The person who wrote Jurassic Park also wrote Andromeda Strain, which is an excellent sci-fi film that you should totally see. It's an older film. Really loved it. But he also wrote Westworld, which is another excellent sci-fi film that you need to see. Westworld is about a amusement park, right? And they've built these robots that are cowboys. So you can go to this amusement park and you can see cowboy life. But, of course, the robots that play the cowboys go psycho and end up attacking the people that are visiting the park, which is literally Jurassic Park, right? So the same person who wrote Westworld wrote Jurassic Park, I believe. They basically just wrote the same novel twice, my brother likes to point out. But they're all good, right? See those movies. See these Spielberg films. They're all good. E.T.'s great, right? It's a little weird because E.T. comes back to life, but it's good. It's so good. It's very emotional. Lots of heart. Spielberg has lots of heart and not a lot of science, right? I think probably the most science that he gets is probably AI. And I think a lot of that science came from Stanley Kubrick into AI, not from Spielberg. But really good stuff. Okay, so that's my number 3. Number 2 is Dune. And I'm talking about the new Dune. I wanted to make a joke where I pretended to talk about David Lynch's Dune, but I couldn't do it because I like David Lynch's Dune. I think it's a good movie. It couldn't encompass Dune, right? You can't make Dune in 2 hours. You can't do it. It's foolish to even try. And unfortunately, David Lynch got caught in that trap. And it's got some weird David Lynch, right? I mean, there's this weird part where the Harkonnens have captured the Mentat of the House Atreides. They have that Mentat. And they walk in with this cage that has a cat in it. And the cat is suspended from the ceiling of the cage on like this hammock thing with its arms hanging down. So the cat can't touch the ground. It's just swinging in this cage. And the cat has a rat taped to it. And the Harkonnens explain to the Mentat that the only way the Mentat will survive is if it milks this cat every day. That is some freaky David Lynch. Okay. That's, of course, not in the books. That's David Lynch. That is some freaky David Lynch. At least I don't think it's in the books. But the new Dune is so great, and that director is so great. So we've already talked about Blade Runner 2049. He made that film. Really well done. The sex parts get a little bit weird, but overall, really well-made, beautiful-looking film. And, of course, he also made Arrival, another great sci-fi film that everybody should see. Arrival gets a little weird for me in the science because the aliens that arrive see the future and the past at the same time. They see everything, and she eventually grows to the point that she sees everything as well. And of course that means that the aliens speak English. And if the aliens speak English, there is no need for her in the movie. And of course, all of this is easily explained away. You could say fate exists, fate is real. You don't get to choose. The aliens have to go through this with her in order to get to the next step. But then why do they make such a big deal about her choice at the end, choosing whether or not she should get together with the guy and have a child that's going to have cancer? She says yes, she makes the choice. So that doesn't really make sense. But you could say that they've seen many different futures, and this is the only way that it actually works out. And if that's the case, I wish they at least would have said it somewhere in the film. I don't like to make excuses for movies. I consider that an excuse, right? That should be in the plot. I don't want to write the film for the filmmaker. But it's brilliant. It's well made. It's beautiful to look at. It is absolutely worth seeing. Yeah, so those two films that we're seeing. Dune is great. It's so good. It sticks to the book as best it can. There are moments, of course, that don't stick to the book because it's just not too feasible, right? You've got there's the Fremen who works with whatever culture controls Dune. They're like this person stuck in the middle. They have to work with that culture and they have to work with the Fremen. And they get killed. And the way they die in the book is very different than the way they die in the film. But I believe that the way they die in the film captures the power and the beauty of the way they die in the book. So it's great. The Dune film is just great. There's a new one coming in a couple of months. It's going to be great as well. This director, I love what this director's doing. I feel like, honestly, they're kind of the new Spielberg. I know they don't make movies like Spielberg made. That's kind of not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to compare the two in that aspect. What I'm saying is this director has captured the minds and the hearts, mostly the minds, whereas Spielberg captured mostly the hearts, but captured our culture's imagination now, right? This sci-fi director is our culture's new current sci-fi director, and it will be a shame but it will be good too. They're going to continue to make great movies. It'll be kind of a shame when they stop making sci-fi and they move on to do things that win more Academy Awards and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Or that they consider more socially relevant, That's going to happen. Hopefully it happens before they just start making bad movies, right? Which will probably also happen. The time will come when they're just not as good as they used to be. And that's fine, right? That's the cycle that we're in. Right now, brilliant films. And I hope he keeps going and going because they're just brilliant. Okay, number one. Probably nobody had to guess this. My number one is 2001: Space Odyssey. It is so creepy and cool and weird. It has heart. It has Hal. Hal is the heart of the movie, which is crazy. The humans aren't. But it has mystery. Your brain is just going, what is happening? It's so cool. And hopefully you can give it a watch without... I'm just going to give a brief synopsis so that people can watch it. If you've watched it and it's too confusing and you don't like it, hear what it's about and watch it again. So it is about an alien culture that makes things evolve. This culture says, hey, there's intelligent life on Earth, these apes. Let's evolve them one step. So they put that down, they put the monolith down, the apes touch it, and they turn into humans. Now, it's not instant, right? It takes all of our history into account. We evolve from apes into humans. And then once we've reached that evolution, we're able to go in space. We go in space, we land on the moon, we start studying the moon, and we realize that the moon has 3 poles, which doesn't make any sense. There's a North Pole and a South Pole, which have magnetic poles, right? We can see their magnetic field at work. But there's a 3rd pole, which doesn't make any sense. There's not supposed to be a 3rd pole. So we go there and we dig and we find a monolith. And when that monolith receives sunlight, or in the case of the film, when that monolith gets touched by a human, it sends a signal to Jupiter. Okay, a warning. Humans have evolved. They've made it this far. Okay, they touch the monolith, we send the signal. Signal goes to Jupiter. Humans are like, what the heck? Why is it sending a signal to Jupiter? What is it? Because we don't know about the original monolith that evolved the apes. This is the first one we remember, right? So, okay, let's build a spaceship. Let's go to Jupiter. So they build a spaceship. They put some astronauts in there. Dave is in there. And Hal is in there, right? The AI computer. So we're going to Jupiter. And the people who make Hal explain to Hal that Hal should not tell the humans what the plan is until they get to Jupiter. Do not tell them until they get to Jupiter. And Hal's like, okay. And Hal is our first AI, right? Hal is truly able to think for himself. And when he's told to not tell the humans, it freaks him out. And halfway through the trip, he's like, are these people evil? Are they going to ruin this thing? I'm responsible for this mission. And I have this horrible, weird humans that are, I don't trust them. I don't know them. I have to get rid of them. Hal decides to kill the humans because of this confusing instruction that he was given, right? We don't know how to deal with AI. We don't understand it. Hal's like a 2-year-old, right? And if you tell a 2-year-old, make sure you keep that secret. You don't know what's going to happen, right? The 2-year-old, two's too young, I'm sorry, maybe 4-year-old, right? The 4-year-old is going to go through the trauma of needing to keep a secret, but needs to blab everything, and it's going to be really hard. It's hard for a 4-year-old to keep a secret, right? Let's just put it that way. And if they feel like they're going to be punished if they don't keep the secret, it's even worse, right? It's horrible for them. So Hal decides that he's going to kill everyone on board. And he picks off most of the humans, but Dave lives, and Dave shuts him down. And when Dave shuts him down, Dave gets the message that the signal from the moon was sent to Jupiter, and they are going to Jupiter to see what was receiving the signal that was sent from the moon. That's the whole mission. They need to find out why a signal was sent to the moon, or to Jupiter. So Dave jumps in the pod. He's by Jupiter. He goes out and starts looking around, and he finds a giant monolith. Okay? And he floats up with his little pod and touches the monolith, and he evolves. Right? And that is the entire story. We don't know what Dave turns into. They call it the Star Child, right? It's literally a baby floating through space toward Earth. We don't know what the next step is, but because we were able to go to the moon and dig up the monolith and then go to Jupiter, the aliens decided that we were ready for the next step. So they evolved Dave. That's the whole movie. So hopefully, if you watched it and you didn't like it because you didn't understand it, hopefully you'll be able to rewatch it now and maybe understand it better, so that you can just sit back and enjoy it instead of trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Right? It's just sci-fi mystery coolness. It's very cool. All right, well, that's my number one. This is a hugely long video. I'm probably going to break it in half. I hope you enjoyed it. And this list is going to evolve and change over time, I hope, as we read more sci-fi together and as we watch more movies and more movies come out. Hopefully neat things will happen in the future. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you later.